here's a little pop culture quiz for you. What do Batgirl, Harley Quinn, Princess Twilight Sparkle, and Bubbles from the Powerpuff Girls all have in common? Well, the answer is that they were all, at one point or another, given a voice by the voiceover artist Tara Strong. Now, the thing to note here about this little quiz is that while you might recognize every single one of those characters, you probably wouldn't recognize Tara or her abundant talent were she to walk past you in the street. But what does this have to do with wine, you might ask? Or more specifically, for today's topic, what does this have to do with the cultivar of Viura or Macabeo? Well, when you discover that many of Spain's most famous and most age-worthy white blends are all made with the cultivar of Viura, you will then see that the link is obvious. And perhaps for those of you for whom it is not obvious, let me explain why Viura, or Macabeo as it's also called, is the Tara Strong of the wine world. In many of the regions where these white blends are world famous, the names of the relevant cultivars don't actually appear on the wine label. And so consumers never get to see these names, and therefore the cultivars themselves never get the credit for the genius work that they deliver.
It's actually a pretty good analogy.
He is so smart.
And he's cute and he's funny.
But he's also kind and humble and
brave and sneaky and strong.
So in Rioja, for example, where the white wines of that region are growing in popularity on a global scale, Viura is often the backbone or main player in some of the white blends that age best and get the most respect. In these wines, Viura is often supported by another of our favorite cultivars, which is Grenache Blanc. Viura is also one of the main players when it comes to producing cava, which is probably Spain's most famous genre of sparkling wine, although it gets called Macabeo a lot more commonly there. And finally, even though Viura is almost certainly indigenous to Spain, it also makes some incredible white wines in the south of France, in Roussillon. And again, in the south of France, it gets blended with Grenache Blanc and produces some absolutely insane wines.
How is any of this relevant?
Well, the relevance of all this is that Viura is experiencing a little bit of a glow up on a global scale, and it's beginning to be bottled more and more on its own. And this grapey glow up is part of the reason why today's hand drink solo wine of the day even exists. It is the Pilgrim Wines Viura, which is vinified by the pioneering winemaker Henry Kotze. As I've said elsewhere, Henry was the very first winemaker to ever bottle Viura in South Africa on its own, and that was during his 2020 vintage. Since then, the Molineux have also bottled a Viura on its own, although they labeled it as Macabeo. The Pilgrim range of wines includes some fascinating bottlings, including South Africa's only Bastardo do Castelo, or Trousseau as it's known in Jura of France. They have an old vine, partially skin contact Chenin Blanc, a super smart Syrah from Stellenbosch, and this pioneering, rather unusual Viura. So, who is the man behind Pilgrim Wines? Well, as of 2024, Henry Kotze, as he's otherwise known, was the cellar master at Mulderbosch in Stellenbosch. Mulderbosch was an incredibly important pioneering estate in the early 90s, especially with regards to their Sauvignon Blancs and Chenin Blancs. A little bit of a fun fact, they were the first estate in South Africa ever to experiment with putting Chenin Blanc into brand new oak barrels, which was quite a big step, not least of all because of the cost of the barrels, but also because no one was taking Chenin Blanc seriously then. Not even Mr. Chenin, who would arrive a little bit later. But for all the trailblazing of their white wines, it's two red wines that are really exciting me the most right now. The first is an estate Cabernet Franc, which earned itself a Platter 5-star last year, and now a newly released Reserve Estate blend, which is led by Cabernet Franc, but is also supported by some more classic Bordeaux cultivars. Another little side note before we get back to Viura, I think Cabernet Franc in Stellenbosch is enormously exciting right now. I have said so before, but especially Cabernet Franc-led Bordeaux blends. The problem is there's not a lot of them out there. So if you want to catch on to what I'm talking about, get hold of the Mulderbosch Estate Reserve Bordeaux Red Blend. Also track down Raatz's Jasper Bordeaux Red Blend, or one of the older vintages of the Bosch Crescendo. But make sure you get the older vintages because on release, they seem like they need a little more time. Now, when we finally get into the glass and give it a sniff, the nose is delicate, but it's not shy. And what I mean by that is that it's not leaping out of the glass at you like a Sauvignon Blanc or a Riesling might. But if you get into the glass and give it some attention, you'll discover a lot of detail on the aromatics that is really quite impressive. There's a sort of zested lemon note and then a slightly sweeter, almost more floral apple skin type element. and then more serious, moody gravel dust. And as it warms in the glass, you get these kind of slightly broader stone fruits, or maybe even a touch of nectarine emerging. And when we get round to giving it a sip, well, I said the aromas were delicate, but it's a whole different ballgame on the palate, because what you get is some really generous, warm, sunshine-style pineapple fruit, and this smashes up against this juicy, lovely, elegant satsuma acidity. I guess we would call it nachis here in South Africa. So you've got sweeter tropical pineapple up against the citric satsuma type element. It is stunning. What's really interesting to me is that it manages to be both arresting and smashable at the same time. And what I mean by that is, if you wanted to drink it really fast on an ice cold day, it would be very pleasing. But if you were to sip it slowly, as I would suggest, and give it a little more attention, you would discover an impressive level of detail when it comes to the clarity of the fruit, a little bit of those mineral gravel elements coming through, and the texture on the palate. So that's all we have time for today. But if you enjoyed this video, then support us on Patreon and subscribe to the Handling Solar YouTube channel, where we release at least 6 videos of this sort each month. We talk about things like unusual cultivars like Viura, but also grape science, wine history, and some of the rising winemaking stars that are coming out of the South African wine.